Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second edition of the MMA on the Island podcast. My name is Joe Frescott. I'm joined here by Aiden Williams for episode 2. We promised you guys you'd be seeing us a lot. We're back, and this time you can see our beautiful faces.
I know, now you can see them.
Yeah, we had a lot of technical difficulties with the first episode. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, I tried to do a little bit too much. But this time, one camera, we're going to keep it super simple. And before we get started and recap UFC Vegas 73, which actually turned out to be a pretty decent card.
You know, on paper it didn't look good, but it was better than expected.
It was much better than expected, and me and Aiden, to our delight as fight fans. But we have to introduce somebody, our third member of the podcast, my boy Bob here.
Bob came for the show. He wanted to see what's going on in the podcast.
Bob was here last week. You didn't see Bob last week because we never even introduced Bob last week.
I know.
But Bob is here, and Bob's rocking a Broncos Von Miller jersey this week. He's going to be rotating every week. But this week he's feeling his inner Broncos fans. Maybe it's because you have two in the room with him, unfortunately. But, you know, Bob, do you have anything to say?
He's a man of very few words. I like that about him.
Yes, he's very few words. Doesn't say much, but his presence is always felt. And he's always good for, one of those.
Little 1-2 combo.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy. Just punch him in the face, doesn't even say anything to you. It really doesn't get better than that. But me, Bob, and Aiden here. Time to break down. We'll start with UFC Vegas 73, just the fight recap. And gotta start with Ferreira versus Johnson, man. To kick off the night, as someone who is Michael Johnson was one of those guys that was one of the first fighters that I ever watched. So seeing him go down like that was not fun.
No, it was not fun at all. You know, when you look at some of Johnson's notable wins, right, including Poirier, Ferguson, those highlight his career. But then you look at the knockouts he suffered, that brutal one against Emmett, and now against Ferreira. It's like how are you going to remember Johnson's career when he retires? As the guy who had these spectacular knockouts, or the guy who got spectacularly knocked out?
Yeah,
it's rough.
Yeah, when you look at Michael Johnson, and Ferreira obviously won that fight via TKO in the second round on a brutal knockout, which I'm sure if you're a fight fan you saw, because it was nasty. He was out cold. You heard him actually snoring on the broadcast.
No way. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, because I think someone pointed it out, and then when I went to rewatch it and I saw it, you could hear the snore because he was out cold.
Oh, goodness.
But when you think of Michael Johnson, I mentioned a little bit last week as well, he's somebody who had such a great fight career.
He did.
And, 13 and 15 in the UFC, but has over 50 fights done his total career. And he's just a guy that was like, he stepped up and rose to the competition.
He did.
When when you think about his most notable wins, it's a great fight against Poirier. Who else did he beat? That's
Ferguson. He beat
Tony Ferguson as well. Just really high profile guys that were once either interim champions or always or highly ranked fighters throughout their career. But then you see him lose to a guy like Diego Ferreira, who's never even sniffed a top 5 opponent. So granted, he is a good fighter. So Michael Johnson, I feel like he's a guy, again, he elevates himself when the big competition, but down the stretch of his career, especially later on, he's kind of, fallen off, and he still got really quick hands. He looked good in round 1.
He looked very good in round 1.
He did look good in round 1. I thought that he won that round. It was just tough to see, a knockout of that caliber, and, it's mixed martial arts. One little mistake, and
it's over.
That could be it.
I know, that's the beauty of the sport.
Yeah, and to talk about Diego Ferreira, he went down, he was down 3 straight fights he had lost. That's where I was at now. He lost 3 straight fights coming into the fight with Michael Johnson, and he admitted, to the press prior that he thought about retirement. I mean, he has a great career. He was bolstering a great career of 18-5 in the UFC, but he was 38 years old, and he was coming off 3 straight losses. So for him to be able to go back and get the KO, and I must mention that was, we'll go through each bet that I had on the week, but I had Ferreira money line. 1 of 1 so far on the bets on recap UFC Vegas 73, and so Ferreira, it's good for him. And if you're Diego Ferreira, you're a guy. I mean, he's 38 years old, but he's got a lot left in the tank. One on the flip side, Michael Johnson, you might be thinking about retirement.
I agree, Joe. Yeah, looking before the Johnson fight, his last fight was against Gamrot, and that was almost 18 months ago. So he took some time off, like you said, after suffering 3 straight, but he lost to guys like Gamrot, Gillespie, and Dariush. So he's lost to these really good fighters, right? And coming back, and we thought this might be a shot at Johnson to potentially elevate his career in the the second half. But Fortunately, that just wasn't the case, and who knows? This might be a start to Ferreira's career, and we'll see how far he can take it.
Yeah, I mean, he is 38, but when you look at where they're going next, and I think it's time to get into, we're going to switch up the little bit of the format. We're going to go into who we think each should fight next after we break down each fight. So, for me personally, I think Diego Ferreira, at this point of his career, 38 years old, I don't know whether he has enough in the tank to maybe make a run in a really stacked lightweight division.
Yes.
But I think he has a couple of really good, high-quality fights with him, and I would like to see him against Terrence McKinney, who just got knocked out via knee. It was brutal I think it was a month or two ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
But, the timelines would work out with that, and I think it would be a little step down in competition for McKinney, who's a young guy, and for Diego Ferreira, a guy who's 38 and still got a lot left. I think that could be fireworks.
I agree, Joe. Yeah, you might be right. This might be 38 years old. It's kind of hard to, I guess, pursue a title run, especially after suffering the losses he suffered.
Exactly.
But we'll see, man. All best of luck to him and his future endeavors. But we'll see how far he can take it.
Absolutely. And then when you look at Michael Johnson and who he could potentially fight next, I saw a fight, Aiden, and I think you're going to love it because we talked about it last week, the potential double retirement of Michael Johnson versus Clay Guida. How does that sound?
I think, Joe, that's a matchmaker. That's matchmaking heaven right there. Excuse me.
Yeah, because it was just a month ago that Clay Guida fake retired and got everyone up there. Well, just got Dana upset because
Dana's over.
This episode, I'm upset at Dana right now. This will be a reoccurring theme of today's episode. But Clay Guida fake retired on the mic. Dana was happy. That whole thing happened like a month ago. So Clay Guida coming off a win, Michael Johnson coming off a loss. Both guys scrappy, late in their careers. I think that'd be a great, perfect double retirement fight. Put that on the beginning of you could even put that on as the first fight of a pay-per-view card.
I agree.
I feel like
agree.
Honestly, just on name value alone. Granted, will it be? And honestly, I was going to say, will it be as exciting? But those two guys are exciting fighters.
They are exciting fighters. And Guida, he just set the not the record. I think he has the fourth most takedowns or third most takedowns in UFC history. So he has a memorable name of his own. Johnson, like we've discussed the last few minutes, how the trajectory of his career. So that's a fight I could definitely see in the beginning of a pay-per-view card, and what a way to go out.
Yeah, and I think that those two fights both make sense for both guys, and we talked about last week a little bit about how the love for like that double retirement kind of thing, where it's like both guys can go out on their shield, win or loss. I think that would make for a great matchup. But now it's the next fight of the card, which was for me my second highly most anticipated outside of the main event, and it was Filial versus Joaquin Buckley. Buckley he went up or down?
He went down. He was a
down.
prior middleweight.
Yes, he was a middleweight and went down to welterweight. I don't know why I brain fart for a second, but he able to get it done in his welterweight not debut, because he did fight once in welterweight.
Well, I think from 2014 to 2018.
Yeah.
But this is his first fight at welterweight in the UFC.
Yeah.
So this is
so welterweight debut
big.
in the UFC.
Yes.
I knew he did have a history at welterweight, but won via a KO TKO in round 2 as well. Late in that round with a nice left head kick that was really nasty.
One thing I like about Buckley is anytime, well, for the most part, when he knocks out his opponents, they're always in like, what's the right way to describe it? It's like it's a unique way he knocks him out. Obviously, everybody's seen that spinning head kick he had.
Oh yeah.
And now this, front high kick against Ferreira. So this guy is not a snooze fest by any means. This guy is an exciting fighter. And, after Buckley suffering 2 straight against Imavov and Curtis, I think he could start something special at 170, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses at this weight class.
Yeah, and it was really a competitive round 1 as well with both guys. I think Buckley did edge him out because of those takedowns, which were both very solid takedowns. But I think Buckley, for him, I think he's still very early in his... I think he's a young guy, so I think for him...
Just turned 29, so yeah.
Just turned 29, and granted, some may say that's old. I think that he's obviously in amazing shape, so I think he's in, right in a good spot in his career.
Absolutely.
But I think, he looked good. He was able to string together some nice combinations before the head kick, and he's a guy that, definitely someone to look out for at welterweight, and you got to feel bad for Filial on the other side. He looked good through round 1. It was a competitive round 1, but Buckley was just able to catch him.
Yeah, Filial, in the first round, he was, I think what gave Buckley that round, besides the takedowns, was the volume he was producing.
Yes.
You know, watching that first round, Filial, he was landing some clean shots, but you could notice that he was pretty hesitant to, I guess, approach Buckley. Buckley, you know, he wasn't really overzealous. He was still approaching him, and you know, just doing what Buckley does, and you know, it paid off. It paid off obviously in the second round after with that KO. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So for Buckley, now looking ahead, we both had the same guy,
Yep.
and it's a fight that really makes sense. They're very similar in their styles, where I don't feel like they're I don't want to say complete mixed martial artists, because they're both very good at a lot of different things, but I think it'd be a really nice stand-up match. You know, Joaquin Buckley, I think, should fight next a guy who's another killer at welterweight, and that is Callian, or better known as Chaos Williams, a guy who has really looked good in the past, and that would be a fight that would just deliver straight fireworks.
I agree. Excuse me, Williams. He just had his split decision victory against Rolando Bedoya not too long ago. He suffered some losses though against Pereira and Randy Brown. So, but he does have a pretty solid professional record of 14-3. So he's not a slouch by any means. And I was just talking to Joe before we started this podcast. Buckley, I think he needs another win against an unranked opponent in this weight class before, you know, we know the talent that this fighter has, but before he goes up to 170 and fights these top-notch guys,
Yep.
he needs another unranked opponent. You know, he fought
100%.
ranked opponents twice. Imavov, I think at the time, was 11, and Buckley was either 14 or 15. He lost to both of them. So I don't want to, if I'm Dana, obviously I'm not, but if I was Dana, I don't want,
goodness,
you know,
I would be very hostile to you right now.
I know, and I wouldn't blame you, Joe. But being Dana, I wouldn't want to, you know, kind of throw him into the top 15 with the of the welterweights right away, because that is, in my opinion, either the second or third most competitive weight class in the entire UFC, probably behind 35 and 55. Those two weight classes are, you know, insane to begin with.
Yeah, they're very stacked from the top to the bottom, and you know, like you said, there's not a lot of weight classes in the UFC that aren't that stacked. You know, I think heavyweight. We'll get into women's strawweight, which actually I feel like out of the women's divisions is probably stacked. Probably take that back. Women's
out of the three there are, I'd probably give it to strawweight.
Yeah,
but
strawweight probably has the most depth, but you know, but just in general, that the welterweight it's killers from top to bottom. So
Killers.
A guy like Chaos Williams would be a great matchup for Buckley. And for Andre Filial, I think in this point of his career, gotta look at a guy who suffered a loss in brutal fashion last week in Court McGee, who lost to Matt Brown. We talked all about that. But Court McGee coming off of now 2 straight losses against Brown and Wells, both via TKO. So he's a guy that if he doesn't hang it up, I think that could be a good matchup for Andre Filial. Could be a good fight for both of those guys to get back into the win column.
I agree, Joe. And my pick was Filial against Kevin Lee. Now, obviously, we know Kevin Lee for the fighter he was at 55. You know, he took some time off. He fought actually in Khabib's organization known as Eagle FC.
FC, yep.
He won a fight there, and now he's making his move back up to 170. I think not to say Filial's a tune-up fight, because you know we watched this fight. He's a good fighter, right? But you know,
he's a tune-up fight.
Huh?
But he is.
Yeah, right. He's right. But you know, I think for Lee, especially getting re-signed to the UFC, I guess you want to give him a fight that, not to say he'll guarantee win, but you certainly don't want him to be re-signed to the organization and lose, especially to a guy like Filial who's just suffered 3 straight losses. So I think, you know, for Lee, he's still young. I think he's 30 years old. So for him to, you know, I guess restart his career at 70, give him an opponent like Filial, and we'll see where he can go from there. I think that's a good initial test for Lee.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll see.
And was it ever has Kevin Lee gone out and said when he wants to return? Because I feel like
I know he
remember
just signed a
with the
contract.
UFC, yeah, but
there was rumors of him and Ferguson too, which would have been nice in the summer. Unfortunately, Ferguson is not the same fighter he was when they fought the first time for the interim belt at 55.
Absolutely.
Ferguson, you know, he's been on the rapid decline as of late.
Honestly, I think that for Tony Ferguson's sake, I don't want to see that, because I think Kevin Lee has a lot left in the tank. Last time we saw him in the UFC octagon was in August of 2021 when he lost to D-Rod via decision, and he was lost to Charles Oliveira 2020 in March via a sub. That was a fight that was really fantastic. Kevin Lee was doing well in that fight before Oliveira caught him. what was it? I forget what exactly submission it was.
I don't know if it was a triangle choke.
Yeah,
I'm not too
it
sure.
was something like that, where it was like kind of like a last, end of the round type of thing in the third, and to Kevin Lee at this point. But he's a guy that I think I'm still very high on Kevin Lee. I think he's very talented, and I like that matchup for him. That would be a great tune-up fight. I didn't even really consider Kevin Lee when I was looking at, potential fights to make, because I didn't really know when he'd return. But for a guy for Filiao, I think it'd be really a perfect matchmaking.
That's if the UFC doesn't cut him. He's unfortunately he suffered 3 straight, like I mentioned.
That's true.
For Lee's sake, it'd be good if they keep him around.
Yeah, just for that one fight.
And he's still young. Filiao's only 29, so.
Exactly, and I can't imagine they would cut him, because he does have, he's proven that he's a tough guy, and he's had, a string of wins in there as well.
Absolutely.
Despite his three fight losing streak. So he's a guy I expect to stay, and Kevin Lee would be a great matchup. But you got to go now to the third fight of the evening. It was Gondanez versus Ducote. I hope I'm saying that right. Ducote, a former champion in, I think it was Invicta FC, which is the all-women's MMA organization. She could not get it done. Gondanez won via unanimous decision. And personally, unfortunately, this was the one fight that I was unable to see to completion. But what did you see in that fight, Aiden?
I'm right there with you, Joe. That was the one fight I didn't get to completely watch. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Nothing against the women's strawweight division.
Yes, because we watched Ernst Hill start to finish. Did not turn it off for a second. And that was a fight that delivered. We'll get into that in a second. But for Gondanez Ducote, we'll make it very brief here. For Gondanez now, I think she's riding a 2 or 3 fight win streak at this point.
Okay.
And I feel like she could be somebody who is ready for top 15 competition in the strawweight division, and I really like her, and they call her Lupi Gondanez, and she's kind of a fan favorite. I really didn't know about her coming in, but doing more research for the show, unfortunately didn't get to watch the fight, but seeing all the lead up to it, she's someone that's gotten a little bit of some notoriety amongst fans, and that's something that doesn't really happen too much in women's MMA. Obviously, you have those big stars and the elite that they gravitate towards. But for someone who's unranked and has a little bit of, of notoriety and a good personality behind the mic as well, for Lupi Gondanez, I like her after 2 straight wins to fight, the karate hottie, Michelle Waterson Gomez.
Yeah.
I think that could make for a good fight.
I actually picked her for a different opponent, but we'll get to that later on.
But I think the karate hottie is someone who's coming off of a couple of losses now, and needs to get back in the win column. I think she's ranked 11th right now in women's.
Waterson Gomez, right? You talking about?
Yeah.
She's I'm sorry.
She's ranked 11. Yes. Gondanez unranked as of right now. So I think that fight could be her jump to the top 15. I don't think Michelle Waterson should be fighting. Gomez should be fighting, above.
Absolutely not. She's lost 3
down.
straight. No.
And there's a couple of and I think there's a couple fights lined up underneath in that strawweight division under her, so I feel like that makes the perfect matchup. Granted, she's somebody that could be at 18-11 for a career. It could be someone maybe on her way to retirement as well. But I think Gondanez could be a good fight. I think one of those two, winner of that fight, gets their number or keeps the number. I think that'd be a good fight for her to get into the top 15 in the strawweight division.
I agree, Joe. And I agree with you with the Waterson Gomez pick. Like you said, this is after suffering 3 straight. And I don't know exactly how old she is on the top of my head, but there's not really, you don't really get to see that many like careers resurrect themselves after suffering losses like that. So yeah, for Lupi Gomez, I'm sorry, am I saying that wrong? Lupi Gondanez. Sorry guys.
Nah, you're good.
Yeah, Lupi Gondanez. That'd be a good way for her to, I guess, assert herself in the top 15 of a relatively competitive 115-pound women's strawweight division. So we'll be looking forward to Gondanez's next fight, and who knows, it could potentially be against Waterson Gomez.
Absolutely. And now when you're looking at Emily Ducote, again, I really hope I'm saying that right. Didn't watch the fight, so I didn't get the pronunciation.
I know. I'm sorry, fight fans, for my ignorance.
I know. This will be a very rare occasion.
Yes,
we don't see one of the fights that we're talking about. But briefly, to look into who potentially could Emily Ducote could fight next, I got Carolina, and I really hope I'm saying this name right. We're talking about pronunciations today. This is a tough one. Carolina Kowalkiewicz? Kowalski with
You know
Carolina.
Close enough.
What about Carolina K?
Carolina K, that's a good one. I like that.
Carolina K is
Clean nickname.
16-7 right now in her career, and she is someone who is coming off of 3 straight victories, is unranked. I think that would be a good bounce back fight for both women. One kind of surging, one after just one loss after picking up a win. So I think that fight makes sense in strawweight, and at strawweight, I mean, it's a very active division. You know, when I was trying to make this, and I think when we were both trying to figure out what the potential matchups would be, there were a lot of matchups already being made for this summer. So this was kind of a tough one, but Carolina doesn't have anyone on her schedule, so let's put them together.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm looking at Ducate's previous fights right now. She obviously lost to Gondanez. Just suffered a loss to Angela Hill, who's obviously the main event. We'll talk about her in a little while. And then she won 3 prior to that. So I like that matchup against Carolina K. I'm gonna go with that as well. And yeah, you know, that'd be a good way for, Ducat to, I guess, get back on the win column. And for same thing with Carolina K. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see, fight fans.
So now for the co-main event here, and I was very much looking forward to this. I think I was looking forward to Buckley. Then looking forward to this fight, Shabazian versus Hernandez, and then Buckley, and then Dern. So for the fight that was probably my third anticipated, Edmund Shabazian came out of the first round really strong, looked very good, and honestly looked like he put on a little bit of muscle.
He did. I was watching the highlights. He did look a lot bigger than his last fight.
Yeah, he did look like he put on a little muscle mass since the year that we've last seen him. But Anthony Hernandez, man, via KO TKO in round 3, really, honestly, at the end of the day, it was Hernandez weathering that storm at Shabazian. He was aggressive early on. He had a lot of, he had Hernandez in some pretty deep waters, I feel, in that first round. But Hernandez was able to just get out and survive that first round, and really kind of took over at the end of that first round after getting a takedown or reversed in a sprawl, whatever the case may be. And then after that, it was really just Hernandez from start to finish.
It was Hernandez from start to finish. Yeah, it was the beginning of the end, unfortunately, for Edmund Shabazian. You know, you look at Edmund Shabazian, right? Obviously, this is probably not the best comparison, but I mentioned this to Joe off camera. He kind of reminds me of Dominic Reyes in a way. Obviously, it's not the same thing. Dom Reyes fought John Jones in the eyes.
To a lesser extent.
Huh?
Just to a lesser extent.
To a way lesser extent, because a lot of people thought Reyes won that fight with Jones. When I watched the highlights, I think Reyes won with Jones, but John Jones having the name he has, it's kind of hard to lose when it goes to the scorecards in a close fight like that. But yeah, man, Edmund Shabazian being this high prospect, 12-0, and then losing 4 out of his last 5. He just won his last fight prior to this one. It'd be immature for me to say that this is the end for him because he's still so young. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna take, and I don't know who he needs to fight to get back on that win column. But unfortunately, it hasn't been looking good for Shabazian, and hopefully he could turn it around. But I don't know.
And somebody who for Shabazian, actually I think I may have made a mistake with who I had him. Doesn't Phil Hawes have a fight? Didn't we just talk about this?
I think Phil Hawes just lost recently.
Yeah, or did Phil Hawes just lost recently? No, I think Phil Hawes. Okay, I take that back. Phil Hawes does not have a fight lined up right now, but he's a guy that I think would be a good matchup for Edmund Shabazian because he just lost to.
It's a great matchup, actually.
Yeah, to Aliskerov. Who I know that guy.
Aliskerov, he's fighting.
Aliskerov. That's how you say it.
See, I don't. You know what? This guy, Aliskerov, I'll just mention him briefly. He's fighting Paulo Costa at, I don't know if is it 291? I'm not sure if it's UFC 290. I think it is 291 because that's the Poirier Gaethje card.
Yep.
And this guy, from going from Phil Hawes, or Hayes, excuse me, guys, to fighting Paulo Costa, who's a 5th-ranked middleweight in the world. Talk about a jump. That's like a Pereira jump after he beat Bruno Silva and then ended up fighting Sean Strickland. And obviously after fighting Strickland, he fought Izzy the second time. Well, third time, but first time in the MMA and won the belt. So Aliskerov has taken a huge leap in competition, and I think part of the reason being, and I don't know if you guys know this interesting fact, his only professional MMA loss is to Khamzat Chimaev, believe it or not. This was before the UFC days. So what kind of fight would that be, right? Both, Costa loses to Aliskerov, let's just say hypothetically. Aliskerov gets ranked number 5. Khamzat, we're waiting on a fight with him. We don't know what's going on. There's a lot of speculation between Kamaru, and it was supposed to be Khamzat.
That one.
Oh, I love the Kamaru fight.
I think we can talk more about the future matchups, because that's going to be a big segment of today's show, is talking about kind of looking into the future now.
Absolutely. Sorry, guys, I get carried away sometimes.
It's okay. I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways I had from the listeners from episode 1 was how enthusiastic we are about it, and that's not a bad thing at all.
Not.
Getting on tangents, it's not a problem. This, at the end of the day, it's just a conversation. But back to Shahbazyan and Phil Hawes, because I do definitely want to take some time to talk about the potential Usman Shimanov Kazmat potential fight. But he's already licking his lips, licking his chops at the thought of it. What do you think, Bob?
I think he agrees.
Bob will get back to us later. But but for Phil Hawes, I think a guy coming off of 2 straight losses now, obviously to Askarov and to another guy, Doldizi as well. I think it's Greg Doldizi. Yeah,
Doldizi. Yeah, he just lost to Vittori not so long ago.
Yeah, so that's 2 straight knockout losses for Phil Hawes. So I think a good bounce back fight for both of those gentlemen would be each other, because they're both coming off of 1 loss, 2 losses. Shahbazyan's in dominant fashion, and Phil Hawes lost his last 2 in dominant fashion. So I think it makes for a good fight for those 2 guys, a good bounce back fight. I think the loser maybe kind of is on their way out, maybe of the organization.
No, you're 100% right.
But it would kind of be fighting for your contract almost, and I think that make 2 guys that are super desperate makes for a super great fight.
When you have your career on the line, there's a lot more motivation going into a fight.
Exactly.
So.
And both those guys will have that sense of urgency.
Yes.
Yeah, so is that your matchup as well?
It is.
Yeah. So
I feel bad. I'm copying a lot of Joe's, Joe's picks, but when you look at the fighters, I mean, a lot of the guys he's picking make sense.
And honestly, because the big difference between last week and this week is because, and we'll mention this in a bit, the UFC had so many announcements and made so many fights in this past week since we've last talked. Like a lot of our fight cards that we fight potential match makes that we speculated were already out of the window as soon as it was already posted, because of the fact that the UFC on Tuesday with Ngannou's announcement dropped their entire summer slate pretty much.
I think Dana was a little salty, and he needed to get the eyes of the fans.
A little, yeah. They wanted to get the attention off of that and onto the UFC. But that, again, that's why there's not that many guys that don't have fights right now. So it makes the most sense. All right, yo, we're back. Little technical difficulties here. For whatever reason, my phone started playing Millions by Young Thug, which obviously you heard, and then the recording stopped for our visual. So I don't know what happened there. I really have no
it was
no explanation.
Got me going, but
the iPhone had a mind of its own on that one. But we got to go to that last fight now, and the main event of the evening, one that me and you going into it were not too excited about, but Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill kind of delivered.
It actually did.
Kind of delivered.
That fight showed me a lot. Obviously, for those who watched that fight, Dern, besides that second round, dominated from start to finish. Yeah. One judge gave Dern 10-8 rounds at the first, third, and the fifth, and the other 2 judges saw 2 rounds that were 10-8 in Dern's favor. But one thing I will say is it showed Hill's heart, and I guess her want to be in that ring against that top opponent. Unfortunately, watching that fight, Hill's not that caliber. But it showed that, she belongs, and I look forward to watching her fight again, but obviously she's not ready for that competition at all. So. Yeah,
and for Mackenzie Dern, I forget who exactly put it this way, but they felt it was Mackenzie Dern 3.0 kind of. We've seen her development already. As soon as she got to the organization, she was very raw, prospect and talent, and she kind of developed a little bit, then Mackenzie Dern 2.0. But I feel like in this fight, she really elevated herself and showed it was a really beautiful balance of, the striking and the grappling. Because, you talk about that round 4 where she got the 10-8, and it was primarily her grappling that got it done for her, just, being able to weather on her and maintain that top position. But her striking looked good too, and Angela Hill was primarily a striker.
Yeah.
So for her to be Mackenzie Dern now strike Angela Hill on the feet was a very positive thing to see from Mackenzie Dern. And Mackenzie Dern after the fight, she was very excited, and she called out Rose Namajunas, and I'm not so sure she's ready for that just yet.
Here's the thing, right? You look at Namajunas, right? She has a record of 12-5. She's beating notable opponents, obviously. She's beaten Zhang Weili, or Weili Zhang, sorry, I mixed up the name.
Yeah,
but she's beaten her twice. That second fight was controversial, but that's irrelevant right now. She beat Weili twice. She lost in that snooze fest, probably the most boring fight of all time, in my opinion, to Carla Esparza. And she lost to Andrade, and she beat Andrade. So she's beating good guys, right? But she's another one, like, she'll beat these great fighters, and then she'll lose to people that, not to say are relatively unknown, but are just not at the caliber of the fighters that she's beaten. You know, Namajunas being ranked 2. She's been extremely inactive recently.
Yeah.
Her last fight was against Esparza, and I think she's had a couple of grappling or jiu-jitsu tournaments.
When was that?
A fight against Esparza?
Yeah, how long
that
ago?
was actually
like a long time
the Gaethje-Ferguson card. I'm sorry, forgive me. Chandler versus Ferguson.
Chandler versus Ferguson.
Yes, I forgot what pay-per-view that was, but
time ago.
Yeah, because that was actually I came home from boot camp a couple days after. I remember watching that fight at Buffalo Wild Wings. But yeah.
Well, that's it. I feel like when you watch fights like in like a bar in a restaurant, it's.
No, you good.
Is my phone doing it again? Because it's about to be on site. Hold up, 1 second. All right. Well, our second and last, hopefully, technical difficulties break there. I thought I queued. I don't even want to say her name because she might come up.
Yes. It's better off.
I thought I queued her, and she, and then I heard it, but I guess I'm just simply hearing things. Maybe it was your phone.
I am too, Joe. It's all right.
Whatever.
We're both crazy.
We're struggling out here with the technical difficulties, but we'll get it done. We'll get a perfect episode out eventually.
Yes, we will.
But now looking ahead for both, I know Mackenzie Dern won the fight, Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas' last fight, which I still didn't get to. Yeah, I just want to find out when was it?
It was May.
So long
I want to say May 11th. Jesus, May 11th.
May 11th. If you get on the
I'm actually a genius. It was 11th or 10th.
7th.
No! Oh my God, bro! Damn,
okay,
I'm close enough.
You were within a week, so I'll give it to you.
Damn.
But yeah, that split decision. I don't think she deserved to retain her title after that. But I mean, Rose Namajunas to come back to Mackenzie Dern, I don't mind it. It would be a huge.
And they're
step
both
up in
they're both
competition.
good ground fighters as well. Jiu-jitsu, obviously, I don't know if Dern's a black belt in jiu-jitsu or not, but she has that extensive jiu-jitsu background. Rose with her recent competition in grappling jiu-jitsu, so I think that'd be a fun matchup for the fight fans. But you brought up a point: is Dern ready for that type of competition? I don't know.
I don't know. And for me personally, my answer would be no, which is why I think she would take a step down in not a step down in competition. She'd still be fighting up, but not that much of a step. Maybe
like a little
8
to 2 is
like
a big
little
jump.
baby step, not a huge step to that number 2 spot. And I think a perfect girl to bring her to that up is Jessica Andrade, who just came off of a loss against.
She's suffering 2 straight losses.
Yeah,
she lost to Blanchfield at 25 back in February, and then Yan Sonyan.
Yang Sonyan. Yeah, that's the best pronunciation you can get out of me today.
Don't expect more.
But after coming off 2 straight losses, I think she's someone that if Mackenzie Dern could get past her, she's very dangerous still. I think Andrade. I think she's a little bit of a skid, but I think she's due to bounce back.
I agree.
And I think Mackenzie Dern would be a great fight for her to welcome her into the top 5 of competition at the strawweight.
Yes, and Dern, obviously, like we discussed, she has that talent to compete with the top athletes in that weight class. So Andrade would be a good test. And obviously Andrade, one thing I'll give her credit for is she's been extremely active. I don't remember, she just had a win. I don't know if it was against Marina Rodriguez. You guys might have to fact check me on that. But she beat Rodriguez, and then she lost to, like I mentioned, Blanchfield and Yan Zonyan. And I think that was 3 fights within the year, or I think 7 months. So she's been active. I'm sure she'll be looking to fight soon again. And I don't see Dern showing any signs of potential inactivity. So that would be a good fight to look forward to in the upcoming months, and a true test of, if Dern is actually ready for the top 5.
Yeah, so for Andrade, she started off the calendar year fighting Lauren Murphy. That was a decision. And then she's lost the last 2, as we mentioned, to Blanchfield and Yan. So, but she was coming off a 3-fight win streak after her loss to Valentina Shevchenko. She fought Cavallillo, Lemos, and Murphy. So those 3 straight victories, now 2 straight L's.
Well, she beat Lemos? Oh, Lemos is fighting for the title. I just realized.
Yeah, she did. She beat her a little over a year ago on April 23rd.
Not that long ago.
And she stopped her too by submission. So and again, I feel like I don't know if Lemos is really deserving of that title shot. That's not something we'll get into for today's episode. That's something we'll look at and
closer to the fight.
Yeah, closer to the fight. It's in I think 2 weeks now, right? Or is that? Oh no.
No, that's in the summer.
That's later on. I was confusing that with the Amanda Nunes fight. I was confusing that, which obviously because Pena dropped out, the girl who's fighting her now, not
good. I'm not. Sorry guys, I didn't mean to say good, but I obviously, I wish Pena a speedy recovery. I think she fractured her rib or something of that nature, but she wasn't deserving of a trilogy in my opinion.
Yeah, obviously we don't wish will on any fight, and wish ill will on any fighters, but yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, sometimes those things kind of work out for the best. I don't really know if any woman right now is worthy of fighting Amanda Nunes after how dominant she beat Pena.
The second time, it was like 50-44. I think all three judges scored or something like that. So
yeah, it's a tough weight class. She's I can't see, but again, surprises happen.
That's true.
We saw how Juliana Pena beat her in just what was really just a bizarre fight.
It was. Nunes, she looked like she didn't want to be there that first fight around.
No, she didn't. It was very weird.
The way she tapped so quickly, it didn't look like herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for Angela Hill, somebody who showed a lot of heart, was getting beat up, but stayed in all 5 rounds, was able to get to a decision. I like her against Pierre Rodriguez, somebody who is Piera Rodriguez. My apologies. Who's coming off? I think she's on a 3-fight win streak now, 9-1, as a professional. And I think that'd be a good fight. I think Angela Hill's next fight should be somebody who's, on the ascension, somebody who's maybe potentially someone who could crack the top 15.
Yeah.
I think Pierre Rodriguez is one of those women that are right on the cusp, so I think that's a good match to make for those two.
I think so too. I originally, after you brought that up, I originally had her going against Waterson Gomez, but Joe brought up a good point. Not to say Hill's a gatekeeper, but I don't think Hill deserves to be fighting up.
Yeah.
No, Waterson Gomez.
Honestly, I don't mind that matchup either, because you think of two girls coming off of a loss now, and maybe that's that fight could be the winner keeps their ranking, or takes that maybe 11th spot, or whatever the case, whatever. Because obviously the rankings come out tomorrow after this, so they'll be a little different. But if Angela Hill's still like ranked 14 or 15, that could be okay. Who's one of the two have to keep their ranking, the other one maybe out of the top
picture.
15.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think both matchups are good. I don't hate or dislike either of them, honestly. I think they both.
No. But logically,
they both make sense.
She probably doesn't deserve to be fighting up in the rankings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. But
a hungry dog would.
Matchmaking. It's not as
tricky.
Cut and paste as that. Like I feel like those are like criteria that's good to stick to, but. As we see, and especially with the UFC, they make sometimes they make fights that just defy all logic.
Yes. Like the Elizabeth fight.
Yeah, exactly that one, and and anytime Conor McGregor in the past 5 years, not 5 years, 3 years has fought.
Yeah.
But now to give our Performance of the Night awards, same format as always. We're gonna go with the biggest stock rise for me, Anthony Hernandez. I thought. There was 3 adjectives that I used to describe his performance. He showed durability, he showed adaptability, and he showed comfortability in the octagon against a quality opponent. And those are 3 things that are very, very important in order to be one of those elite level guys. So I think he's ready for that, a big step up, because to be durable and survive that first round, to adapt and overcome what Shabazian was throwing at him and just really take over the fight, and to be comfortable in those really, because when I watched that first round, I was like, man, Shabazian looked good. I thought that was Shabazian's round. But after that, it was just Hernandez, different fighter after that first round, and really, I guess, towards the end of the first as well, a little bit. But just a dominant fighter. I think his stock rose the most, got that go main event spotlight as well. So Anthony Hernandez is a guy to look out for at middleweight 185.
Yeah, that was my biggest stock rise as well. And again, I mentioned before, I hate to piggyback off of Joe a lot, but when you watch a lot of these fights, some of these picks are just too obvious to not, pick the fighter that he's picking.
Oh, yeah.
So I was on the fence with Buckley, obviously having that glamorous knockout, but it's too early, I guess. We all know the type of talent Buckley has, like we mentioned earlier, but I think it's too early to say that he has necessarily like a super, like I guess a really ascending stock rise. We'll give that a fight or two to really say.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think as well. I didn't mean to cut you off, but with Buckley's somebody with that highlight reel KO is now a notable name.
Yes.
You know, everyone knows who Joaquin Buckley is if you're a fight fan. So it's somebody that his stock. It rose in my opinion, obviously because he got the finish and he did so in pretty impressive fashion. But for someone like Anthony Hernandez, who coming into the fight night, I really I knew of him. I never seen him fight before that night. And he was somebody that was on most people's radars, but now we're talking about him facing top 15 competition.
Yeah.
Doesn't really get easier than that. So on that one, but now for the biggest stock fall for me, it was Michael Johnson, and I wrote 5 beautiful words here that I got a little chuckle out of Aiden when we went through our show notes, and it was please retire, I love you.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson, obviously I don't think he's going to retire. But it's tough to see him go out in that way. I think that double. I really like the prospect of a double retirement fight.
Yes.
With him and Clay Guida. So for Michael Johnson, biggest fall. I think he did look good in round 1, but it's to get knocked out in that devastating fashion. Some fighters don't come back for that. And at 36 years old, maybe time to hang up the gloves. He's had a really long UFC career, over 40 fights. So might be time for him.
Yeah. If it's not Guida, if it's not him and Guida the next fight, I'm just ignorant to the fight game, but I just don't know who would be a logical matchup for Michael Johnson if it's not Guida.
Yeah.
And for my biggest downfall, I picked Shabazian. I said McDonald's version of Dom Reyes. Obviously, he's not Dom Reyes or was Dom Reyes.
Smaller McDonald's version.
Shabazian obviously before this fight had his knockout victory. You thought maybe he suffered his few losses. Maybe it'd be time for him. Maybe that skid he went on was temporary, and that doesn't truly define the fighter that he was. But to get knocked out against Hernandez, that doesn't mean he's a scrub. He could still
I think he does have a lot more fight left in him. But
he does, but
to gas after 1 round, I do agree.
That's bad.
It was not a good look, and although he did look a lot stockier, like bigger, as you can see, you can have all the muscles in the world. I mean, you're looking at 2 of them right here. Oh no, don't flex. Gosh darn it.
I couldn't help it.
Why the hell? Now I look like a little boy, but it's okay. Back to fighting. You have all the muscle in the world, but obviously, it doesn't translate to the fight game.
No.
So for Shabazian, he looks bigger, but gassed out after 1 round. That's concerning, and I agree. Definitely took a hit off of him last night. And for finish of the night, I like Buckley's. I think that Ferreira's was as spectacular, and I think was the more devastating in terms of Johnson's reaction of him kind of freezing up. But for Buckley, I think it was a really nice KO. Got him down and dropped him, and he did have a follow-up shot, but the ref already stopped the fight at that point.
Yeah, that one was weird, though, because Buckley stood over his opponent, and then the ref waited a second to stop it, and I think Buckley hit him right after.
Yeah, and then the ref pushed him off, and then as you just said, it was like
what are we
Buckley
doing,
didn't know if he was finished, so he kind of hesitated for a second, like, all right, well, I guess I gotta punch him.
Yeah, I know.
And then the ref was upset, but if you're the referee, you gotta call the stoppage, especially after he was on his back like this, he was done. Out for the count. So that was I couldn't go Ferreira because I just love Michael Johnson. That's just
I know.
Too much.
I had to go Ferreira. I'm sorry. I had to go Ferreira just based on the way.
It's the right pick. I can't get mad at it.
No, it probably. No, I'm not gonna say that. But just the way, like you mentioned that, I didn't even know the way that Johnson was snoring and the way he fell back. His arms crossed, his head hit the canvas.
Yeah.
It doesn't get more brutal than that.
It really does.
So I guess based on impact, I would go Ferreira. But Buckley's finish was exciting as well.
Yeah,
both really good finishes.
Absolutely. And for the fight of the night, we'll make it quick because I really want to get to more of the major headlines today.
Absolutely.
Because this episode not going to be nearly as long as the last one. We had 2 hours last week because, great fight card UFC Charlotte this week. Probably not as much so. But Dern Hill, fight of the night, we both agree unanimously.
Absolutely.
It was the most competitive through 5 rounds. Although Mackenzie Dern did, dominate for the most part, I thought it was the most exciting to watch, an exciting round 2, and it was just nice to see Mackenzie Dern's development. So I think that one fight of the night in the UFC's eyes, and I think it's fight of the night for both of our eyes as well.
Yeah.
So now for our biggest takeaway, we're gonna go. We just each have one here today, and I think Hernandez. I already said it, so I don't want to sound like a broken horse, but he's ready for top 15 competition. I think that's said and done. Just book it. Book him versus top 15 opponent.
I agree.
We're good.
Yeah. Really quick with this, I said Buckley might have found his new home at 170, and obviously, I'm sure you guys saw after Buckley won the fight, you know, he had a little slip up, a little Booker T moment, if you will. Because just out of excitement and enthusiasm, you know,
Yeah.
the way he stepped into that new weight class, you know, dropping 15 pounds, especially carrying the muscle mass that he does, by no means was that easy. You know, a lot of these lighter weight classes, they're 10 pounds. As you get up in the weight classes, it's a lot more of a gap in weight.
Mm-hmm.
So to cut 15 pounds like that and, you know, perform the way he did, I think Buckley might have found his new home at 170. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think Buckley, I think that's the weight for him. If he can get down to 170 consistently and it doesn't affect his chin, we didn't really see his chin tested too much.
No.
I guess
he got wobbled like a couple times.
Yeah, he got wobbled once, but you know, well, for him to see, we'll see whether his chin getting tested. You know, we'll say, because that's a big thing with weight cutting. You know, like you lose. You know, it's tough because you know you got to lose a little bit of muscle if you're someone like Buckley who's jacked, but at the same time, you know, the chin goes as well with the weight and having to cut more.
Like
but overall, I think UFC Vegas 73 on paper didn't look fantastic, and I thought the prelims were good too. There was a great story with Kamaru Usman and not Kamaru Usman, actually. Funny enough, I don't know how I got Usman confused with Colby Covington. Covington and the first fighter on the card. Who was the first fighter? I forget his name, but I want to mention that story very quickly before we move on to all of the big news that happened from from in the last week, because honestly, bigger than this card is the news that happened across MMA.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy I'm looking for is Diemba Gorambio, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was a nice thing because he trains at the same gym as Colby Covington, and
the future welterweight champion, as you all know.
We'll see about that. The meat glazing for Colby Covington.
Oh, it's unreal.
For you will never
I could
end.
talk about that all day, but we won't do that.
But Colby Covington actually helped him financially, you know, because he came in, when he was, you know, when this fight was booked, he posted a picture. He had $7 to his name. And again, I'm blanking on his name, Diemba Gorambio, but he was able to get the unanimous decision. He looked great in that fight against Takashi Sato. So, you know, it was overall an exciting fight card, and I think that, you know, a lot of good stories, but none bigger, I feel, in the past week than Francis Ngannou, and we'll get back into that in just 1 second. And as we mentioned in the last show, Francis Ngannou had a big announcement on Tuesday, May 16th. We filmed on the 15th, so we didn't know, but it was, as we said last week, the worst kept secret in MMA. He signed with PFL, and what was kept a secret was the terms of the deal.
There's a lot of different stipulations on that contract.
Yeah, but honestly, I think it's something that, and which is something why I really want to really delve into this, because it's so impactful for the sport of MMA. You know, there's so much, you know, to unpack with just someone signing. You know, it's nothing like what we've seen in, you know, in ever really in MMA for a contract. It's by far the most, you know, elusive, illustrious, whatever word you want to say. And Francis breaks it down with Ariel Helwani. So let's get a little bit of a gist of what he had to say in his own words.
Could you tell us, Francis, how many years is this deal for, or is it how many fights? Like, because I know they go by seasons. So is it for, you know, X amount of fights or X amount of years? And could you tell us, if possible, how many?
It's not about years. It's about fight. Let's just say it's not for many fights. I'll keep it that way. It's for multiple fight deal. But most importantly, what you have to understand here, this is like a partnership, strategy partnership. Like, for example, PFL Africa is not going to be something for 2 years. It's for life. You understand?
Right.
Like, yeah, though that is something that we're gonna work on it like basically forever. So there is not a time limit on that. The amount of fight year doesn't really matter. We are already in the business, and then even if we have had a certain limitation of fight, that's easy to work on.
Okay. Is it more than 2?
Close to 2.
Okay. And that, fair enough. you will not be a part of their tournament, right? You'll be strictly fighting under the pay-per-view super fight umbrella. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that exactly.
any chance you fight, like, they have a deal with ESPN. Is there any chance they put you on ESPN, or is it just pay-per-view only?
Um, I don't know. ESPN is not their US distributor, pay-per-view
ESPN is their U.S.
distributor.
distributor on TV, and then they have ESPN Plus, this and that, and they've done one pay-per-view, but they could be on regular ESPN. And so I was wondering if there's any sort of situation where you would just be in front of millions of people on ESPN, the channel, not the pay-per-view platform, or is it just pay-per-view?
No, I think it's just pay. Then I think it's just pay-per-view.
In reality, what you're telling us is that you have put in your contract that anyone that you fight is going to make a base of $2 million. You will not allow them, the promotion, to pay your opponent, whomever it is, less than $2 million. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I don't want to get in the fight that I'm gonna fight someone that work his way to be in that position. Then they give me all the money, then just give him a little pennies, then he move home. Then I'm like, oh, I fight. No, I think that wasn't fair. I'm like, okay, if you are willing to pay this to me, but what else is on the table? Like what my opponent can get, because yeah, if some guy getting in the ring with me, in the octagon with me today, he must be the guy, right? There's no question about that. He must be the guy. So we both are going to perform. You always need to tango. And if you tango with someone, you have to take that in consideration, right? It's your partner, regardless of the fact that you are fighting, you are in the same side. And if I was in his shoes, I would have liked to be to get that opportunity.
So as you heard there on the MMA Hour, credit to them and Ariel Helwani. We sung him praises last week. I'll continue to. He's my favorite journalist that covers the sport. So if I'm going to use a clip, it's most likely will be from his show, because I really do enjoy the stuff that he does there. But the terms of the deal, each opponent makes $2 million minimum of each fight, and he's not going to be fighting anybody who's, I guess, I don't want to say worthy, but worthy, like that's really worthy of making that $2 million. He gets to manage his own sponsorship deals. It's not like exclusive. So he wants to fight in boxing, and he will be able to fight in boxing while still being under contract in the PFL. He doesn't detail, although Helwani did push him a little bit on how many fights is under the contract. He said it was multiple. Couldn't say whether it was more than 2. But for Ngannou, I mean, what a really transformative deal for him. He's on the fighter board now, so he can help make decisions with the PFL.
He's like the president of the PFL in South Africa, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
not too sure exactly.
So I mean, it's just, and we didn't know Kamaru is starting an organization in Africa, so I could already see it in the future. Those two partnering up
They're close to
as well, because two Nigerian guys who are very, very high caliber fighters and just names as well. So it's such a great deal, and I mean, personally, I was joyed for Francis for him to get that deal and get paid what he's worth.
As happy as I was for Francis, you have to think, where the hell is the PFL getting this money to be paying Francis Ngannou that much? And you think about it, the PFL, they have these
That's a good point.
These $1 million tournaments during their. The one thing about the PFL that's interesting, they have like these seasons, right? So you have to win. It's like this whole point criteria that I'm not too educated on, so I won't really get into that. But they have this whole tournament, and the winner takes $1 million, and then signing Francis to this really extensive contract. And obviously, I think we mentioned last week, or I don't know if you and I were just talking about this privately, but the PFL plans on buying Bellator by the end of next year. So, I'm just curious where they get this money from. Do I think Francis is entirely deserving this contract? No, only because, he's been out. His last fight was against Cyril Gane, which was a unanimous decision. 2 judges scored a 48-47 and 49-46. And obviously, at the time, Cyril Gane was, the super high prospect at 10-0, and then he suffered, 2 losses to Ngannou and Jones. Jones, obviously, he beat Tuivasa before the Jones fight.
Right.
So, obviously, Ngannou, I think he's won 6 or 7 straight after that first Stipe loss. So, there's no denying the name Francis Ngannou has. You have to wonder, at 36 years old, he's not young. Does he deserve the money that he got? In my opinion, no. But I'm not angry about that by any means. He is one of the highest names in professional combat sports. So kudos to him. He does deserve it to an extent. So I'm looking forward to seeing.
I'm gonna have to say it, and this is one of the few times where I'm gonna have to completely disagree with you. I think for the PFL, and they have some great names. Even got some Long Island guys. Chris Wade, one of them. That's a fantastic fighter for the PFL. But when you look at that organization, right? I don't know about you, but are you like tuning in? Like, I mean, if I hear about it, but again, that's another thing with like the promotion, like. I don't know when the next PFL card is.
No,
I feel like with a lot of these other organizations, the marketing and advertising and kind of getting the fight building up the fight hype is not as much as the UFC. But to sign someone like Francis Ngannou, who he made it clear that he's not fighting on the seasons, like he's not going to be one of those guys who fights like the seasons and the tournament. He's just going to be fighting on his own like pay-per-views kind of. But I want to watch him fight. I would watch him fight. And we'll get into his potential opponents later. But at the same time, I'm very excited to see him fight. And for the PFL, it raises their stock, boosts their stock. If they're able to acquire some Bellator guys, that even gives Francis a couple more guys he could look at. But I think it was a good deal for him. I'm really excited to where it goes. And there was a lot of things that happened as a result of this deal. And we'll start with the tweets with John Jones, him and Francis, and we'll put them on the screen now. We were going back and forth on Twitter with taking their own shots, and started with John Jones saying something on Twitter to Ngannou, something along the lines of congrats on making it out or running away or something and ducking and hiding.
Oh yeah, you're saying you're the best fighter from across the street, and then Ngannou's like, come across the street.
Yeah, come across the street. Yeah, so I think that's the one thing that is unfortunate about the whole turnout of it, is the fact that you'll never see that fight.
But Jones has a right to call him out, though. Obviously, besides the name John Jones has, Dana was saying that Ngannou was going to be the highest paid fighter in UFC history, not just currently in history. Yeah. So for Ngannou to not take that money or whatever, and not only that, but tell Jones to cross the street when he was offered to fight Jones, it's like, bro, like. I don't know. Jones was obviously down to fight Ngannou. There was no,
Yeah, this is the issue I have with that, because Francis Ngannou wanted to fight him after he won in 2021. There was a clip that said he wanted to fight John Jones, that year when he was still under contract.
Yeah.
Obviously, John Jones didn't make his debut until this year. So for John Jones, to call him out, it's like, all right, like we know John Jones is game to fight anybody, but I feel that. It's not like, it's like, okay, guys, like, I really don't get the Twitter beef, and, Dana obviously came out and said a couple things about it that I don't care about, because at the end of the day, he's just salty that he lost out on a big name like Francis Ngannou, and I think, honestly, part of what I love about the deal with Francis is that he did it, part of the clause and part of the things that made him stay was he wanted his opponent to make a certain amount of money. So he's doing it for something that's bigger than himself, and he really, which I gotta commend him for. I think that, at the end of the day, as fans, you want to see the best guys find the best guys, and Francis Ngannou is obviously a top 5 heavyweight currently, and you could even argue all time, but
of all time
in MMA, I don't know about top 5, but he's definitely
I thought you said,
I'm sorry,
I thought you said the best of all time.
No, in heavyweight, yeah.
The best heavyweight of all time?
No, I'm saying like the top 5.
Oh,
10,
yes.
Yeah. No, not of all time in terms of just fighting. No, he's one of the least technical guys, ever. But with heavyweights, he had has such crazy power.
Oh my gosh.
Touch you and you're out.
Yeah.
That I think that
if you guys have problems sleeping at night, go visit Ngannou.
Yeah. Anybody got insomnia? Francis Ngannou can fix that for the low price of actually it's definitely not a low price.
It's definitely not a low price.
But money wasn't Francis made it clear it wasn't the money that was the issue. So I think I think a lot of what Dana says at the end of the day is just him being salty.
No, Dana likes to fabricate his own stories at times to his favor.
Yep.
But in this case, I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Because look at the names like you mentioned. Who are these big PFL fighters that'd be fighting? Obviously, he has the opportunity to fight boxing and fighters outside of the PFL. So that I think is where he'll make his money. But fighting top PFL, and again, maybe it's me being ignorant to the PFL, roster, but I don't know these big fights that he'd have in the PFL.
No, and when you look at the PFL for this season standings, and we'll go into it now with potential opponents. Start with the first one, which is Fabricio Verdum, who is 45 years of age now. That's what I'm saying. Still under contract with the PFL, so he's somebody who that's a potential fight right there. Others have called out names like Ben Rothwell, Alistair Overeem, who just got caught popping again, so I can't see that happening.
How am I surprised? Not surprised, rather.
Of course, I love how every episode we're just going to make it a theme of just getting back to Alistair Overeem in one way. But, guys that aren't in the PFL, but the most realistic, I think, thing for Francis is to fight the winner of this 2023 PFL playoffs, because the debut will be in 2024. So right now, in this season of the PFL, because, again, they do go by seasons, right now you look at the top guys, and the only two guys I know are former UFC's veterans in Maurice Green, who was, had a stint in the top 15 but was never very good. Same thing with Jorgen De Castro, who is very old now and on his way out. Maurice Green is second in the standings so far, only behind Denis Godslov. So again, a lot of guys that I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of these names, but I think that giving him the winner of the 2023 tournament, I think just alone Francis will draw enough pay-per-view buys. I think
they might get 50,000 pay-per-view buys. I won't be one of those, but
yeah, no, I will. The streams will come in clutch as always.
Yes.
But still won't tell you where though. But
Absolutely.
I think for Ngannou, just to wrap it up, and I'm really excited to see where he goes with this, because he made it clear that it's not like just a couple fight deal. It's more of like a partnership long term with the PFL. So I'm excited to see what they do. And the PFL is an organization that, if you're looking at the current state of MMA organizations outside of the UFC, I think you look Bellator. But if PFL's looking to buy Bellator, which honestly I didn't even know about that. Is that something that's confirmed, or is that something that's speculated?
I don't know if it's confirmed, but there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
It might be confirmed.
Yeah,
so
we'll fact check that, and I'll put it on the screen if it is the truth, or if it's just speculation. I'll make that clear. On the video portion.
There's no truth to the PFL being close to buying Bellator right now. Hawani implied that the PFL did test the waters. Okay. So it's not.
So it's not confirmed, but I think when you look at Bellator, PFL, and ONE, I feel like those are like the top three that are kind of in competition with the UFC. I think PFL is right there. They got a really nice structure with the seasons thing. Obviously, seasons is something that's so familiar for fans of other sports. And it has a tournament with one winner every year, so that's another thing that's like, okay, they have a season and they have the playoffs. It's as basic of a concept as it gets for fighting. It's something we don't, for sports, but it's not something we've seen in fighting.
No, you never see that for fighting.
So, I like what they're doing, and I think with Ngannou, I'm excited to see where the future holds, because this deal, I feel, this right now is only the beginning of kind of like, we can speculate who he's going to fight and what's going to happen, but I think it's kind of only the beginning of what's truly going to come from this agreement between Ngannou and the PFL.
Yeah, I was just smiling briefly, guys, because, obviously we talked about Joe's love for Dana White as of late, and I look up the PFL, I look up to see if the PFL is actually buying Bellator, and one of the top headlines is, Dana White scoffs at rumors of PFL looking to buy Bellator. He says, "You have no ratings and sell no tickets." Yo, Dana's always hating for zero reason.
Dana's always hating.
Oh my gosh,
which is
why
why
I get so tight.
Yeah, this is why I can't stand it sometimes, because it's just like, again, that's your competitor, and I don't think that he's wrong by saying that.
No.
But at the end of the day, I think that in the back of his mind, he's a little scared of what the PFL can do, especially bringing in a name like Francis Ngannou, because this is probably the biggest name still in their prime that is signing with an organization that isn't the UFC. So it was a momentous moment for MMA as a whole, and I think, like we've seen, just to go off very briefly, with Live Golf and the PGA Tour, how Live Golf was able to get a couple of guys off of the PGA and started to make themselves a reputable organization. I think that the PFL could, follow that same format, and if they're able to pay these guys to come over, Ngannou has now become like a face where, it makes it more of an attractive destination for fighters that are potentially just got cut from the UFC, or maybe deciding between organizations.
Yeah.
You know, if they're able to pay out like, you know, like obviously not as much as Francis, but in the same way, I could very well see them being a competitor, and it's exciting stuff. You know, when you have someone that's a good competition's always great. Whether it's you know, two guys in a cage fighting or two organizations competing against each other for views, for headlines, for fighters, it makes for a more exciting you know, for MMA in general, because both have to, you know, do their best, because, you know, UFC has been the best for such a long time, so why would, you know, so they can get away with a lot of things, you know, like giving Conor some you know, an unrealistic title shot if he beats Chandler, which I could very well see. But you know, but a lot of other things as well, they can just get away with it. Whereas if there's more competition, they might have to kind of stricken what they do and you know, elevate their product.
Yeah.
So it only makes for the better for fight fans. So I'm excited to see where the PFL and Francis Ngannou go from here. But on the very same day as the PFL announced that they were signing Francis had a whole big thing. The UFC was like, a word?
What won't up you?
A word? UFC 291. That's all you had to say. And and I'm looking at the fight card now, and I
get chills looking at it, man.
Yeah, it's hard not to be like, whatever. I don't know the exact date. I don't know if you do off the top of your head.
Nah.
But UFC 289. I will that day. I will not be leaving my couch. I will be.
Wait, 289? You're not leaving your couch? You meant 291.
291.
So I'm definitely not watching 289.
Yeah, I lied. 291.
Yeah.
Which takes place on July 29th. In Salt Lake City, the Delta Center. Utah has been gifted an absolutely banger of a card for international.
Obviously, the last time a pay-per-view was held in Utah, we saw that devastating KO to Kamaru Usman, which really brought a tear to my eye. Probably brought a smile to Phil's face.
Oh my goodness! No, honestly, when that happened, I was so shocked. I was like, that was honestly, you know, and the Usman Edwards knockout, I've never been more speechless.
I just couldn't believe it.
My exact reaction was like, I was like, because I was on vacation, so I was away, and of course, you know, your boy got to watch it on the phone. We talked about this last week. The struggle is real, but we're always doing it. So I'm watching it on my phone, and then it happens, and I drop my phone. And I'm like I was like I couldn't speak, and I was watching it with my cousin, and my cousin was like freaking out because he doesn't know MMA as well as me and Ian do. Most people don't, because they're not freaks like us. But like watching it, I was like I couldn't believe it happened. Like it was crazy.
I couldn't believe it.
It was crazy.
It just looked like, not to say that Leon didn't want to be fighting for the freaking title. Of course he wants to be there, but it looked like, you know, after that first round he beat Usman. Rounds 2 through 4, Usman just started to dominate and just show who he was. And it's so crazy because John Anik, who's one of the best commentators in all of sports, in my opinion, he's definitely a legend. But he's like, that is not the cloth that Leon's cut from, because that DC was like, I think he might have written his obituary, or, you know, he'll take this as a moral loss or something like that. And right after Anik said that, Leon became the undisputed welterweight champ.
That, in my opinion, is one of the greatest moments in UFC history, I feel, and I really hope that this card can deliver the same fireworks. So let's just go top to bottom. We'll just briefly talk about each matchup, and we're starting with the Black Beast, a man we talked about last week as a potential matchup for blanking. Trevino Rosenstruck found it. Both guys, you know, on a little bit of a losing skids now. But they paired him up against Marcus Rodrigo de Lima. Not too sure about
he actually beat Rothwell a couple fights ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's somebody who's not a big name, and so I think it's a good bounce back fight for Derek Lewis. Whether he's getting up there in age that may be looking at retirement, or just.
I think that's part of the UFC's logic into pairing that fight, because Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Too many names to say at once.
Yeah.
But
like 8 names in one.
Yeah. You know, that he's an unranked fighter right now. So with Lewis potentially losing to him, Lewis is going to be unranked. That'd be his 4th straight loss. Yeah, that would be his potential 4th straight loss. I think that's a retirement fight, like Joe had mentioned. If he loses that, there's no point to keep on going. You know, you're only going to be fighting lesser competition at that point. You lose this fight, obviously, at 30, I think he's 38 years old. a title fight is long gone. That ship has sailed. So Lewis, like, you know, he's an exciting fighter. Everybody likes to watch him fight, but you know, you lose to a guy like that, you gotta hang up the gloves. I'm sorry.
Honestly, so I'm excited to see that. And crazy enough, they're on the undercard along with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I can't remember the last time that man was on the undercard of anything. You know, obviously he's not a pay-per-view headliner at this point of his career by any means, but he's a guy that's always good for a pay-per-view or a main event for a fight night. And for him to be on the undercard, you can watch it for free against Michel Pereira, who I freaking adore. I love Michel. Like, Wonderboy's one of my favorite fighters of all time, so obviously I'll be pulling for him. But Michel Pereira is an exciting fighter. He reminds me a lot, and it's not just because they're both Brazilian, of like a you know, like the smaller version of Johnny Walker in a way, because they're both kind of like electric, you know, and I think it's less about fighting style, more about just like the kind of like electricity that they bring, because they're both exciting guys. Like if I see Michel Pereira or Johnny Walker on a fight card, I want to watch. So I literally love that fight. It's going to be a great striking matchup. Wonderboy made it clear that at this point in his career, he don't want to fight any more wrestlers. He's like, I'm done with all that after he got ragdolled by
see, I don't get that logic. I mean, okay, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But if you're still fighting, especially at this point in his career, like, if you're fighting, you want to potentially fight for championships, right? And Wonderboy, he just turned 40, I don't know if it was that end of last year or this year. So he's by no means young, right? So he's obviously fighting significantly down in the rankings, Pereira being ranked, I think, 15th or 14th, and Wonderboy being ranked 7th. He's taking, I'm not going to say a high risk, but you lose to Pereira, do you call it quits?
Honestly,
I don't know.
I'm going to be honest.
Really good against Holland back in December.
Yeah, because Wonderboy is ranked 7th right now, so it is a big step down for him. That'll be 7. It'll be 7 versus 15.
Yeah.
Because Ian Gary moved up to 13th, so that pushed Pereira down to 15. And for Wonderboy,
14.
It is a big step down, but you look at like the rest of the division at this point, and you know, of guys he could potentially fight, he's not in a position to fight up in the rankings, so he would meet Geoff Neal, Sean Brady. He'd already fought Luque, Magny. I like the matchup with Michel Pereira, and I think for Wonderboy, I don't think the ranking matters too much. I don't think at this point of his career that he's realistically looking at a title shot. I really do think that this might be his retirement fight, if not one more.
If he loses, yeah.
If he loses, yes. I think Wonderboy will have his mind set on a retirement fight, win or loss. I think he's just somebody that's kind of his mentality. I feel it's like he will know he will know before the fight's gonna be his last fight.
Yeah.
So maybe he's one fight away from that. I think a win with Michel Pereira doesn't put him any closer to the title picture. So I think it makes sense for him at this point of his career to kind of, maybe he gets one more spectacular knockout and calls it quits. But always great to see Wonderboy fight, and I guess Michel Pereira can be a great stand-up matchup.
Yes, I agree.
And one that could be a stand-up matchup, could be very much grappling as well, is Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. We talked about Kevin Holland being a potential matchup last week, but he draws Michael Chiesa, and that's going to be a fight. Great matchup for both guys.
This is his third opportunity to get into the top 15 in the welterweight division. Obviously, Chimaev, that wasn't really a fair test. But then he fought Thompson, like we just mentioned a couple seconds ago, and now against Chiesa. Chiesa,
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, he's been really inactive. He hasn't fought since 2021. Obviously, he has tons of success on the commentating and broadcasting, chapter. So this is a good fight for Holland. I think Holland knocks out Chiesa when that fight happens, and Holland will take that top 12 spot in the welterweight division, and I'm looking forward to that.
And Kevin Holland is somebody that honestly I feel he's shown that he's ready for that type of competition. Yeah. And I'm just really excited for that, but I'm not as excited for that as I am for Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. I mean, when you look at that fight, we were both have the same reaction. It's like, because it's like Tony Ferguson has had such an amazing, great career. And to see like the drop off that it had ever since he headlined that
5 straight losses.
Yeah, that really just cursed card. Him and Justin Gaethje, the coming out of COVID to be the first sport to return and him to headline. Ferguson's someone that's always game, but against Bobby Green coming off of 5 straight losses, that's not somebody I want to see Tony Ferguson be paired up with.
And obviously Green, he had that no contest with Jared Gordon not too long ago. I don't even know if it was a month ago. and then prior to that, he suffered a KO loss to Drew Dober, who's no longer ranked in the. He was just previously ranked 14, but obviously after his loss to Favola, that knocked him out of the rankings.
Yeah.
You know, I figured on paper this is an exciting matchup, right? They're both really exciting fighters. Maybe Ferguson not as exciting anymore, you know. But I just thought after that Diaz submission, you know, obviously we knew that was Diaz's last fight in the UFC, and that was a main event at UFC 279, if I'm not mistaken. That would have been a great double retirement fight. But I guess Tony, he's not ready to hang up the gloves. He's taking on Bobby Green, which
he's just always game.
He is always game, and you got to respect that, right? Out of the true veteran. But you know, if he loses to Green here, yeah, you got to call it quits, man.
Yeah.
You got to call it.
We'll go back to this if he does lose, and this isn't again until July, so we won't be talking about this till August. And honestly, with it being May right now, it can wait. When it becomes August, then
August will be here before you guys know it. So.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that. But for Tony Ferguson, I think this win or loss should be his last fight. At least honestly, with the UFC. I don't know what his contract is looking like, but
I don't know either.
you know, I hope that this would be it for him, because I've seen enough of Tony Ferguson getting beat up. I really hope that he can get the win. I think Bobby Green poses some threats, but I think Tony Ferguson, you know, could be able to sneak in a little submission there. I think Bobby Green does leave himself vulnerable on the feet a lot, so I think that as long as Tony Ferguson's able to avoid taking damage, because I think the only issue right now with him is his chin. That's really been questionable.
I'm definitely betting on this fight to not go the distance.
Oh no,
shot this goes to the scorecards.
I agree, which is why I'm so excited for it. And the next one as well, a man that we mentioned earlier, Ikram Aliskerov. I don't know why Aliskerov. It's not bad.
Yes,
it's not hard to say, Joe. Well, come on, you got this.
Got it.
Versus Paulo Costa, big step up in competition.
Yeah, I don't know what. You know, I mean, Costa, he just signed this big contract extension with the UFC. He's making, I think, roughly or close to $1 million a fight. I don't know if that's accurate. That's what he said on MMA on the Hour with Fawani.
I don't trust.
I don't know if it was $1 million in $1 billion or US dollars. Like, not even to like crack fun at it. Honestly, I don't know.
No, for real. I don't blame you.
But Ikram Aliskerov, you know, just beating Phil Hawes in his last fight not too long ago. And like I mentioned to Joe, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, the only reason, in my opinion, he's taking this drastic leap in competition is because of a potential fight with Khamzat at 185, you know, down the road being maybe for a potential title shot at 85. We'll see. I mean, that's obviously way down the road. A lot of things have to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, we need to see Costa. We need to see Khamzat fight at 85. We've been talking about that forever, and he hasn't fought once.
No, he has not. And I think something that's interesting with that fight, I feel, because, you know, we talk about a big step in competition for Aliskerov, but when you look at Paulo Costa's last 3 fights, 2020, devastating KO, an embarrassing loss to Adesanya. Adesanya proved he was levels above him. And then we saw him fight a year later.
Against Vettori, right?
Against Vettori. And he lost via decision, boring fight.
And that fight didn't even go. That fight wasn't even at the original weight class, 85. Costa just wanted to be fat that day, and that was actually at a it was at light heavyweight.
Yeah,
ended up fighting
it was light heavyweight, and then he fights Rockhold, and that fight was by no means impressive.
No.
So I think that, you know, it's a step up in competition for Aliskerov, but I think Paulo Costa definitely deserved at this point to fight down. So I don't hate the matchup.
But Costa
just fought down.
Rockhold wasn't even ranked when he fought Costa. Costa was ranked 6th at the time, and Rockhold had a 3-year layoff or something like that. Now he's fighting.
I think it's fair, though, the quality of the win, though, that he had. Because he's coming off of a win after 2 straight losses. But like Luke Rockhold was in no position to be in an octagon against anybody, let alone Paulo Costa. And Costa couldn't finish him after Mike Perry just finished Luke Rockhold and
you saw the heart that, you know, I guess Rockhold just doesn't possess anymore at however old he is. I don't even know, but he's old.
He's late 30s.
He actually stopped to fight himself. He's like, I'm done.
Yep.
So if that's, you know, Costa's most recent quality win,
yes,
then I guess, you know, it makes sense for him to fight down in competition.
Yeah.
This far down, though, I don't know, but it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the last 2, which are very exciting, we get the return of Poatan. He's making a quick return after his loss to Izzy. That's against Jan Blachowicz, and that one is going to be an exciting exciting fight. I mean, the first thing I'm thinking is, if Poatan can work on his takedown defense, because we saw how Jan was able to use his size against Izzy to get some takedowns and win that fight, I think Alex Pereira could really piece up Jan on the feet.
I think so, and I don't know if you saw Izzy. He just got interviewed, or I don't know what he was doing, but he was asked about that fight, and he mentioned the same thing that what happened to him when he fought. He's like, if he believes Blachowicz can take down Pereira's not going to be able to get up, and you know, Blachowicz will do what he does on the ground. But I think if it's a true stand-up match, true stand-up fight,
yeah,
I think Pereira ends it. You know, we see the caliber fighter that Pereira is, and yeah,
absolutely.
It's not going to decision. That's
yeah,
another one.
oh, that's for sure. But I mean, and then you look at Jan Blachowicz right now, the third-ranked light heavyweight, and you look at the
He just fought for a
light
title.
heavyweight picture. He just fought for a title. You know, obviously Yuri versus Jamal Hill is kind of like that next fight. But outside of that, after that, he could be either.
Well, 4 is Rakic, and he hasn't fought since the Blachowicz fight when he got hurt.
Yeah.
5 is Walker and Krylov. I think they're tied.
Yeah,
So,
I think
yeah,
if Potan's ever get this fight, he could very well be seeing a title shot at light heavyweight.
It's crazy to think that.
Well,
right?
it really is. It really is. But you know, he's one of those guys that were fast tracked, but was fast tracked and he was proved very clearly that he was worthy of it, because he's one of the most talented kickboxers UFC has ever seen. And as long as he can keep the fight standing, he should have success against Jan. And for the main event, and for the BMF title, which I do want to go on a little rant here, and we talked about this a little before the show, so you can join. You can go at this together.
Yeah, so please.
Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. Oh my, so excited! It is an amazing fight. We've seen it once. Can't wait to see it again, and it is very much deserving of a headline pay-per-view bout. I'm fine with it being a 5-round main event.
Yes, I am as well.
Why they have to put the BMF belt on the line?
BMF. Could somebody tell me, or maybe somebody could comment this or let us know, what is the relevance of the BMF belt?
Literally.
The most recent BMF champion was Jorge Masvidal, and that was when he fought Nate Diaz. Obviously, we know Nate Diaz is a bad motherfucker, fine, but, like, this should just be like a number 1 contender fight if it's not Dariush, right?
Literally.
Obviously, they were talking about Poirier being the next matchup for Makhachev down the road for that potential Abu Dhabi card. You know, Gaethje was saying, though, this is his last shot at a title. This is the last time he's going to really pursue it. And you know, same thing with Poirier. He just had a win against Chandler. And if he loses this fight, I think he's going to make it up to 70 or retire.
Yep.
Irregardless, rather. And like I said to you, Rafael Dos Anjos, who's fighting Vicente Luque in a 5-round fight night main event in August sometime, he said that the BMF champions were never actual champions, and this is true. Poirier and Gaethje, they both fought. This is actually a fun fact. I'm sure a lot of you guys know this. They both fought for the title twice, and both lost to the same guy twice. They both lost Khabib and Oliveira.
Yep.
They actually both got finished by both of them twice.
Yep.
You know, so it's like, you know, they're bad. They're both bad motherfuckers. Fine, I get that.
Yeah.
But for a BMF belt, like in my opinion, that's almost like a participation trophy.
Literally.
And these fighters don't need participation trophies.
It really is. And I loved the idea of a BMF belt against Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, because they're two guys that weren't at that point title contenders. I mean, Masvidal was on his ascension at that point, but Nate Diaz obviously nowhere close to the title picture. So I love that. I mean, I thought there were two guys, they were beefing on, you know, and they had The Rock, you know, bring him the belt or whatever. It was a spectacle, and I think that that's what it was, and I think that that's where the BMF belt needed to kind of live and die.
That one-time thing.
But when now we're bringing out a BF belt for Poirier and Gaethje, it feels, you know, it just feels like redundant. It feels like meaningless.
It does.
When one of them gets the belt around his waist, I don't really think they're going to care.
No.
So I don't get what the UFC was doing by making that the BMF title bout, because at this point we're turning into the WWE now, where we just have an international champion and a world champion, but this guy's the real champion.
Yeah, what is it?
You know?
So let's just
like, what are we just going to start giving out belts to people just because?
Yeah, so let's say the winner of this fight fights Islam next, right? What are they going to bring that BMF belt to the press conference? You were never the BMF champion.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, bro, what? It's going to be said. I'm smiling thinking about, like, Bruce Buffer announcing that fight. And for the undisputed BMF champion. Like, bro, nobody is going to, like, hype that. I don't know.
No.
That's
I mean,
so
and for a fight card that's stacked, I mean, I don't get, like, because if it was a fight card that was very shallow and, like, okay, they needed something to talk about, but it was the BMF. But for them to have, like, 7 absolutely banger fights that fight fans are like me and Aiden here, like so excited about, and then put BMF out doesn't make sense. But I'm excited for the fight card.
Yeah,
Should be a great night of fights, July 29th. Me and Aiden will be watching as well as all of you. And now another announcement they made that same day, and to start a little controversy, was they also announced UFC 292 that Aljamain Sterling, the bantamweight champion, just saw him defend his belt against the likes of Henry Cejudo just 2 weeks back. And he's going to be making a quick return in August against Sugar Sean O'Malley, a fan favorite, a company favorite. And there was a little bit of controversy there because Aljo on the MMA Hour and on other things as well made it clear that he wasn't sure whether his body would be ready to start a training camp, because he has to start his training camp like this week in order for a fight in August. And he obviously just gained a little weight, and he is still a little sore.
A little generous, Joe.
Yeah, a little generous.
35 pounds of blubber.
35 pounds of blubber for that man. But he's been willing to make the return, and Dana was unhappy and went on this whole little rant about it. But I just want to play that quickly. Let's hear what Dana had to say about the whole Aljamain Sterling situation, and then Aljamain Sterling's response.
So Hunter is my neighbor. Comes over to my house, said, "What's going on?" And I think, we got his manager on the phone, stuff like that. It's just, Aljo's one of those guys who just can't get out of his own way. Apparently he's in for the fight. Why he said that, who knows? It's just, yeah. But this is my life, brother. This is my life.
But if that fight...
The fight is on.
Okay, I don't want to...
The fight is absolutely positively on.
Awesome.
Yes.
You put me in this situation, and you make it sound as if you want me to be the bad guy, tell me behind closed doors, behind the scenes, Aljo, this is what we're going to do. This is the script. Here it is. It's not WWE, but this is the script. This is what we see that the fans are picking up on you. Why don't we just take this and turn the volume up and accelerate the noise and make this as crazy as possible? I'm with it. You guys know I like to play a character. I'll be him. Let me be the character, but get me in on the joke. Let's get in on the joke together. But not when you're going to keep doing this stuff and then making me look like I'm a bitch, or like, nah, bro, you're not going to keep doing that, dog. Like, fuck out of here. Dana, get out of here with that. Nah. I've done everything the UFC has asked me to do. Everything. Man of my word, I show up, I compete every single time, and I do what champions do. I do the media that they asked me for. Driving down from Morristown to the city twice the fight week while I'm freaking sucked out of my mind, going into the city, cutting weight, crazy, famished. Did all the media stuff, make weight, I show up, I perform, I crush the interviews, I say the good stuff, I say the bad stuff, I play the part that I feel like they want me to play, and I play the part that I want to play in terms of being myself. So when I look at all that, it's like, what else could you possibly want from a champion who's active, competing, he's doing the stuff that you asked of him, meaning you're putting your promotional dollars out there for me to go do all these things to big up the fight, promote the fight, and I'm out here in these streets working. So my thing with Dana is, damn dog, why can't you just give credit where credit is due? Why can't you, even if you feel I can get out of my own way, there's no context behind that, because literally everything you've asked me to do, I've done it. So make it make sense. What does that even mean, Dana?
So when I see that, Aiden, and I'm just like, I'm shaking my head, because if you're Dana White, I'm like, why are you getting? I don't like to completely side with somebody. I like to look at both perspectives, and
play devil's advocate.
play devil's advocate. But I can't play devil's advocate for Dana's case here. Aljamain Sterling made it clear that he is that he wasn't 100% sure that he'd be ready, but he signed the contract and he said, I'll be there. So if he signed the contract, I don't care that he's going out and saying, about his body or whatever, because it was the honest truth. But then once he signed the contract, he was good to fight.
And I don't think he has a history of missing weight either.
Yeah,
Aljo's
ever,
good for it.
Ever, exactly. And Aljo's good for it. And he's doing the company a favor by making that short return against Sean O'Malley, because they want him to headline that card. So he's doing the company a favor, and Dana going out of his way to say, he's, I don't know what, he got to get his act together. Get your act together. You need to get your act together.
Get your act together.
By treating your champion with some
freaking respect.
With some respect, and and just to go back to my notes of what I have on the fight card. I have Dana is unhappy with Aljo. Joe is unhappy with Dana.
Yes.
Because
I'm unhappy
give
with that.
Aljamain Sterling, who has now have 3 title defenses, granted one of them was probably just like for the belt type of thing, but to have 3 title defenses now under his belt, and for people to still be, there's no question of whether he's the best bantamweight in the world. But for the company to still be disrespecting their champion, they would never do such a thing, as Aljamain Sterling mentioned, to someone like Conor or someone of that likeness. But I feel like he's being mistreated, honestly. And,
I agree.
I think it really comes down to the fact that although he's a great champion, I don't think he's an exciting champion like by most regards.
That's the thing. He's taking a lot of risk with this fight. And I don't mean sorry. Finish.
Yeah, no, go.
I don't mean to cut you off, but Aljo, he just was interviewed by Megan O'Leary, I think, prior to the Cejudo fight.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying his fight plan was actually very similar. It emulated Cejudo's fight plan. They were supposed to beat each other with the winner. Let's say Aljo beats Cejudo. Obviously he did. Then he wanted to beat O'Malley. Henry wanted to beat O'Malley. And then the winner of that fights Volkanovski. And I think that fight makes a lot of sense. If Aljo has, not such a controversial win, which his last couple of, take away the Dillashaw fight, even that with that shoulder injury, controversial wins, that's kind of made up his. And I'm not hating Aljo. I love you. I don't want. If you ever watch this, I don't want you to think I hate. I'm hating on you, but I'm just being, I'm being like realistic here. So if he goes out there and he fights O'Malley and he does it in fashion, it doesn't go to split decision. And I'm telling you right now, I'm predicting this. If it goes to split decision, they're not giving it to Aljo. They want O'Malley as champion. Yep. So Aljo needs to win that fight, whether it's by submission or by knockout.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or just decisive decision in that. Yeah.
So with the win against O'Malley, I think him and Volkanovski makes the most sense. Obviously, Volkanovski, if he beats Zaire and Makhachev beats whoever, they'll fight for the 55 belt. Yep. But Volk's already fought Ortega. He was going to fight Holloway a 4th time, maybe down the road, not anytime soon. So that fight would make sense. But Aljo needs to take care of business at 35 in August against O'Malley, and I think he does. If it doesn't go to decision. If it goes to decision, I'm not even going to watch the TV. I already know I'm going to see my phone blow up with ESPN.
Yeah, and everybody's saying that it's not a robbery, even if it is, or whatever the case may be. But I think that at the end of the day, the UFC took a lot of. I think the UFC that it had a very up and down week overall in terms of with the Ngannou thing, and then the fight being announced was like their W. The fight card was good, that was a W, but then this whole Aljamain Sterling situation is really a bad rap because you gotta give respect to your guys, and I don't think Dana has given Aljamain Sterling his respect. But if Aljamain Sterling is able to finish Sean O'Malley in August, which I'm personally rooting for, because I think Sean.
I like O'Malley, but I'm rooting for Aljo. Long Island needs it. How can you go against your Long Island?
I know, but some people just don't care. They just love, and I think Sugar Sean's a great personality. He's one of my favorite fighters currently to watch. But at the end of the day, I'm pulling for my boy, and here's to Aljamain Sterling getting the proper treatment. He needs this win in decisive fashion, and I think that it'll be fun to see.
And I hope that I'm just gonna touch on this real quick. I hope that if he wins this fight, actually I'm sorry, if he loses this fight, especially Dana, he's not too big on Aljo. Aljo's not getting an immediate rematch. No, I think. A perfect fight. I'm sorry, I had a little brain fart for a second. Mm-hmm. I think that O'Malley versus DeWallace Willie would be the most logical matchup. I don't understand. I understand. Aljo's your best friend. Yada yada. Bull crap. Whatever. Mm-hmm. All right. He's your best friend, but you're putting your career on the line. He beat Jose Aldo. Boring fight, regardless. He beat Jose Aldo, who's a legend of the sport, and then he dominated Peter Yan. O'Malley had a controversial split decision, and I'm using that word a lot, but it's the truth. Controversial split decision win against Peter Yan, and a lot of people thought Yan won that fight. Some people thought he won 3-0. I don't think that was the case.
No, it was close.
Yan lost to DeWallace Willie 5-0 on every judge's scorecard. Yep. So I don't know what more DeWallace Willie has to prove. He's just fighting. I hate to say it, Aljo scraps. He wants to fight Cejudo next. Aljo just beat Cejudo. Aljo beat Yan twice, but we'll really call it once. Mm-hmm. And then DeWallace Willie beat Aljo. So when is DeWallace Willie going to make a true name for himself and become champion? Because we know that he has the ability to do it. This guy has a gas tank like I've never seen before.
Yeah,
right?
No, he just does not get tired. And it's a very interesting situation. I think that if Aljo wins, he goes up to 45, maybe vacates the belt, leaving Merab. I think that's the ideal situation to fight for the title against whoever the UFC wants to put in a vacant title bout, or an interim title bout, whatever the case may be. But I think at the end of the day, it's very interesting. That whole relationship thing is very interesting. They both fight at Law MMA, right here on the island, Ray Longo's gym. So it does make for something interesting. We'll have to see. But for us here, I think that is gonna do it. I did want to touch on the notorious Netflix docuseries that released this week. But personally, I didn't watch it. I know you watched a little bit, Aiden.
And you know what? It made me.
I'll let you have a little bit of takeaways.
Yeah, I'll be brief, guys. It made me, I guess, appreciate McGregor more as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, we all know McGregor and his
antics
and his past, his criminal history. Throwing the chair at the bus, throwing a chair at the bus, snuffing the old guy at the bar.
Yeah.
Right. So he has a criminal record. But watching that documentary, maybe it was. I guess good times that they filmed it or whatever, but it made me realize the type of father he is, the type of family man he is. His wife, shout out to his wife, Dee Devlin. She was with him through it all. I don't know if you guys know this, but when this guy was a plumber, before his days as a fighter, she was with him, and she supported him throughout, his top and his, I guess, recent fall with the 2 losses to Poirier. So, shout out to her. She's a keeper for McGregor, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made me really appreciate the type of guy McGregor is. The way he works his butt off in the gym. Yeah, I'm wishing him the best when he comes back.
Me
and
too.
I think he knocks out Chandler.
I think I've seen a couple clips. I just haven't watched full episodes, so I don't want to give too much of input until I watch it myself. But I think the biggest thing is this docuseries is able to be personable, and you're able to see the other side. And I think that's what Netflix and Conor was kind of hoping for, and I think they did a good job at that. And with that is going to conclude MMA on the Island episode 2 in the books here. Book it. It is done. 2 episodes in the can, and hopefully, ideally, you can see our beautiful faces still. I don't know if my phone's still working. Hopefully it does. But if the case may be and our camera's still working, we really appreciate you guys for watching. And with that, there's a quick announcement here. Next week, there's no fights.
I know you guys are going to miss us. 14 days without these faces. So
you won't be seeing us, unfortunately. We will be back, though, after the Kai Kara France
and Amir Albazi card.
And Amir Albazi card.
That's going to be a good fight.
That's going to be a good fight card, and, there's no really need to preview that since it's 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a good card. You'll have our reactions to that. That'll be the first thing you see of us next. But with that, my name is Joe Frescott. That's Aiden Williams. And this is Bob. Bob, you got anything to say? Bob got nothing to say. Bob is speechless.
I'll talk to us next week. Don't worry.
Maybe next week he'll open up. He's a shy guy. Give him some time. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening, whether you're doing one, the other, or both. We appreciate it, as always. Until next week, this is MA on the Island. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Everybody.